Hey, folks. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. My name is Pablo de Jesus. I'm the Executive Director of Unitarian Universalists for Social Justice, your MC for the evening. We really appreciate you joining us to learn more about Project Jupiter and to hear some stories from folks involved in the work in various ways. I'm just going to do the typical thing and ask you as friends of the Unitarian Universalist community and you use yourself to please put into the chat your name, your congregation, your state, so that those of us in the call can begin to form some small community during the course of this call, and also so that your speakers know who's on the line with them and where you hail from. I'm also going to ask you to do one additional little thing, which is to please, separately from your name and all that, put into the chat one reason that you're joining us tonight, one motivation or grounding thought for your caring about environmental justice or water or air quality or even transparency and accountability. Because at least to my brain, to my worldview, all of those things are wrapped up in Project Jupiter to one extent or another. But it'd be nice to hear what motivates you to spend your time tonight with us and to care about those things. I will remind you to please mind your own microphone and your video. If hosts like myself have to turn off your video, you may not be able to speak or ask a question later on. Those controls are most often located as icons or buttons within your Zoom dialog box. They look like stylized mics and video cameras. Zoom's always updating the platform, so that's about as much as I can do for you. Although I will say if you're attending via smartphone, you might have to like swipe around to find similar controls. They're a bit hidden sometimes on a smartphone. I'm also going to ask that we treat each other with the same kindness and feelings of generate spirit that you would wish to receive. We can have differences of opinion without being snippy with each other. Please try to stick to questions over statements and certainly use I statements over you statements and we statements over they statements. We do have some basic rules of engagement. This session is off the record and closed to the press. If you're a member of the press and want comments from UUSJ or our guests, we direct you to the corresponding website for appropriate contact information. Independent audio, video recording, copying of slides, and use of AI note-taking tools are prohibited without written consent from UUSJ staff or our guests, which is being withheld this evening. So that means no video scraping, no taking the content tonight and figuring out a way to profit from it on your own platform. Unfortunately, that's a trend that we're seeing more and more of these days. Please do be kind and respect USJ's C3 status. We may be political and engage in policy matters, but we're nonpartisan. USJ is about issues. We're motivated by the idea that multiple forms of oppression are intertwined and that people must work together to end them. We champion our UU values of love, interdependence, pluralism, justice, transformation, generosity, and equity, and we try to focus on public policy and the federal forum. But those fights are always connected to local communities. So we invite you to attend tonight's session in that spirit. Please look for the links that we'll be putting into the chat, various things, not only from UUSJ, but from some of our guests. And we'll offer related opportunities. And so while you're doing all that, please don't forget, none of this is free. It takes people to do things. So please make a donation to UUSJ. And if you fall in love with one of our guest speakers, please make a donation to their organization. And with that, I'm going to bring Reverend Lauren Levewood of the UU Ministry for Earth, one of my new great friends in the work. New is relative. We've been playing together for at least a year and a half now. And I invite Reverend Lauren to offer us a grounding and get us centered for tonight's contemplations and learning and discussion of important matters.
Thank you, Pablo. Hi, everybody. I'm Reverend Lauren Levewood. My pronouns are they or she, and I'm so honored to be currently serving as the executive director of the UU Ministry for Earth and also a member of the UU Climate Justice Coalition, which is in partnership and solidarity with other UU orgs with strong integrity like UUSJ. Thank you, Pablo, for being in community and partnership together. I'd like to invite everyone to take a breath with me now as we come into this space and time together more fully. As Unitarian Universalists, which many of us are, we are diverse in spirituality, but grounded and guided by shared principles and values. We believe in things like the power of transformation, but not a transformation that is irresponsible or lacking in mindfulness, not transformation just for itself and not racing ahead in the ways that sometimes the world seems to be. We believe in pluralism, we believe in integrity, we believe in the power and responsibility of us as human beings to create a heaven right here on earth and an earth that we can mutually believe in. From this place of shared ethics and integrity, which is deeply connected to our love, let us now close our eyes for a moment and mindfully connect with our bodies, coming into this present moment with our full awareness. Feeling your body in space, feeling the position that you're seated in, if you're seated, the connection of your body to Earth's gravity, the air on your skin, out beyond your immediate space, connecting with that which is alive around you. Maybe there's a pet nearby or other humans in the room. Maybe there are plants in or outside your windows, other creatures, other people. Expanding your awareness to all that is of life, which is the reason that we're here to honor life, to protect life, to preserve life, and to live our lives with integrity. And taking another breath and just gently opening your eyes when you're ready. Looking around your space if sight is accessible to you. Looking above and below your device, this little device that connects us but can also be a little tricky sometimes. And just centering back into your body, into your mind and heart, and let the image from the screen come to you so that you feel connected with it, but not tethered to it, so that you feel connected to yourself, to your heart and mind, and that you're imagining the bodies of other people who are here to focus on the body of our planet and what she needs. I'm going to finish this little grounding with a poem by Jennifer Pratt Walter, which is like a prayer. You can keep your eyes open or closed for this moment. This exquisite earth is not a blue poem in space, nor a painting squatting in the darkness, or even a simple bed for light. She is nest and womb. She is seamstress of hours. She is orchestra alive in all names of waters, alma mater, kindler of elements. She is matrix of scars. She is how healing mates our cells. She is the knife and the wound. She is even the scab. Oh, green prayers, find me here as I listen wordless in earth's touchable liminal body, in her sheltering truths that rock from ineffable eyes, for all eyes are hers. We are not born just to recall divinity, but to live inside of it. Amen.
Thank you so much, Reverend Lauren. Um, so it's my pleasure to be the MC for this evening, and I just want to flag for folks that I'm so appreciative of the various organizations, UU organizations that have been endorsed and sponsored this evening. Those include the Side with Love, Create Climate Justice campaign, UUMFE, We just heard from Reverend Lauren, the UUs for a Just Economic Community, as well as Drum. All of our organizations in our rich UU ecosystem are paying attention to the issues of data centers and the harms that are being rendered to people on the front lines in community and in proximity to those. And we're very worried about the complex. It's a involved complex with lots of um, facets of complexity, but also ripe for exercising democratic power and people power. And we've seen that all throughout the primary season this year. All you have to do is a quick scan of where data centers have been a major issue and look closely at the ways that folks are talking about them as primary issues. And you'll notice that there have been lots of cross-party efforts to hold elected officials and candidates accountable to the harms that are brought to bear by data centers. So this is a timely issue, and we at UUSJ, among others, including folks within the People versus Fossil Fuels and the WISC Coalition, we're all looking at these issues and getting engaged in the ways that make sense. And is my hope that this begins a more vociferous engagement by UUSJ after you've put some faces to the cause and to the fights and deepen some of your understanding about what's going on. And with that, I'm going to add or ask that we add Daisy Maldonado and John Copeland, our two first guests, and then we'll hear from them, and then we'll continue to add some guests as we go along. So let's do that. There you go, Daisy and John. Okay. So Daisy and John, thank you for being friends in the work. I appreciated getting to know you throughout the year. It's been a long time in coming getting this session going. But I know that both of you have been working on the issue of Project Jupiter. You have interesting stories and backstories and things to say about it. So can you please just begin to unfold a little bit the story on why you're doing this work, how you came into it, and what do you want folks to know across the country about what's going on in your little rincon of this big national, if not global fight? Daisy, go for it.
Sure. Yeah. Well, thanks. First of all, thank you all for this art. Thank you, Pablo, for setting this up and everyone for joining and this opportunity to speak. I will greet you with the greeting of God's eternal peace. Assalamu alaikum. And I'll say for me, how did this all get started? It definitely came to me. I will say that. That's where it all started. I was previously working with an organization that worked specifically in the Sunland Park, Santa Teresa area where this data center project is going to be constructed. And yeah, we heard rumblings of this construction, and we knew very little up until a vote happened back in September. But I'll just take a step back and talk about myself personally in terms of the work in organizing. That I was previously with this organization for 8 years, and it was established to serve the smaller unincorporated areas and the smaller cities in our county. A lot of the power in New Mexico is held in the northern part of the state, but that's also true for our county, with a lot of the power being held centrally in the city of Las Cruces. And even though there's 37 other smaller communities in this area, they really don't get to make sort of decisions for themselves. And so the power is centralized here. And so this organization was established to really reach out to those communities, get folks activated, support their leadership, and really try and figure out how we can work together to ensure that that people have the equitable living, including clean water, safe roads, infrastructure, other things of that nature. And so when this project was proposed to us, that community specifically had already been suffering a water crisis for over a year. Well, more than that. But another, in terms of getting attention and actually getting the state to respond, the state finally had responded early in 2024 when there was a water crisis just a few months prior to that. But this community, you know, has suffered from bad, poor quality water that's contaminated with arsenic. And so that was the biggest fight that we had there with the community, you know, supporting their advocacy to ensure that they had the right that they have to clean and safe drinking water was provided to them. And so for me, especially when I came on board with this organization and all the work that we do, it's really about serving community and really trying to get justice that everybody deserves. So we thought we were pretty successful. And the water provider there actually came into compliance and was in compliance the whole year prior to Project Jupiter sort of landing in our lap. And so in early 2025, we heard about it, but it didn't seem like a real sort of project that was going to come to fruition. But then as the year progressed, we heard a little more rumblings and still it was like, well, it's maybe something could happen. And it's interesting because when we did ask some of the local electeds about it, they said, oh, don't worry. If that project even happens, it won't happen for years to come. No, they were clearly not telling us the truth. They were not being forthcoming. And so when it was presented to the community as a full sort of project, when it became something that we had knowledge of, was late August. And there was a public hearing to approve $165 billion industrial revenue bond to finance this project. And that hearing took place on September 19th. So we essentially had 3 weeks to scramble to figure out how we're going to organize around this, get questions or get some of our questions answered, which we never did, but and really show up in a way to the county commission to say no, that this project, you know, would not be good for our community. And as it stands, the water provider just came into compliance and has difficulty providing safe, clean drinking water to the community. And if we allow this industrial project, these data center projects, you know, to come into our community, they're going to be prioritized to receive that water, right? And where is that going to leave the same community? You know, it's a small municipality with a little in that area with like about 20 to 25,000 people. And one thing too, specifically about this community that it breaks my heart, but also again, like fuels me to know why it's important to support them, is that they have been characterized in the past by our state government as a stain on New Mexico. And so, and even a county commissioner even mentioned to me as well, talking about funding, is like, well, we don't want to give funding to that community because we can't trust them. But what about all the residents, right? What about all the people that live there? So, yeah. So this is the fuel that keeps me in the fight. After September, things got pretty, I guess they got a little quiet. Again, things continue to move very quickly. We weren't aware of all of the different steps that were happening behind the scenes, including changing the zoning. There was an emergency well application that was submitted and approved very quickly. So things, again, behind the scenes were happening very quickly. And one thing that myself and our group that we were working with decided was to go ahead and pursue a lawsuit against the county for not following their own process for this specific industrial revenue bond. I don't know if I would call that a catalyst, but that was definitely a break in the story, because the project that I was working under was fiscally sponsored by a larger organization. And to preserve their funding and their reputation, they really pushed for the project or the program to remove itself from the lawsuit. And so when I refused, I was terminated from my position. And certainly that was unexpected. Yeah, I guess that's just, again, another thing that sort of has added fuel to my cup to to fight this fight. What we've learned since then is that funding, again, has been one of the bigger issues around whether or not we were allowed to pursue that lawsuit. And yeah, anyway, so since then, and that happened in November, I've started organizing with other folks in other ways, but with the same intention of stopping the project from going forward. And the other thing sort of this led me to, this sort of opened up, and I think folks here, and from a spiritual sense, right? It's like, what's the next step? I've been doing this for 8 years, and this fight has to continue, but what's next for me in terms of my trajectory? And yeah, I have several confidants that I confided in, and they all said that that I should run for county commission. And so it was almost like full circle, like, okay, well, this project led to me losing my job, and these decision makers made decisions based on what they think, right, is economic development, and not really caring for the community or caring for the health and well-being of their constituents, which is obviously a big concern. And so I thought, okay, well, yeah, I want to go represent that on the county commission. So along with continuing to organize, and so since January, though, so much work has been done to respond to air quality permit applications, to respond to the emergency well application, to trying to figure out where the permits of this and that are happening, to giving public testimony at the county commission, forcing the county commission to answer questions about the project, and trying to force the developers, the companies, to answer questions, which they still have yet to do, right? A lot of it's simply propaganda. And even that fighting propaganda campaigns, we're on the second round of the third propaganda campaign that they have pushed out in our county, trying to change the perception of the project. So yeah, it's been quite a bit of work. And I know this against C3, but I did win the Democratic primary on June 2nd. And so thank you. And so moving into the general election, but yeah, this is what we see as, our group, our folks, as a way for us to also, right, to not only clap back to industry, but to move into government and bring a government in alignment that's serving the community, that is not serving industry or billionaires, or thinking that extractive industries are somehow going to benefit economically our community, when we all know that that's not true, right? So maybe, I don't know if I've gone over my time, but I will pass it to John. I feel like he, yes, friend and confidant in this work, and has supported us. And so you are welcome.
Thank you, Daisy. Thank you, Pablo and Reverend Lauren. Before I talk about myself, I do want to add what I see, my perspective of Daisy. You know, someone who has had, I think, 7 or 8 years of experience being executive director for a community organization, who has a degree in economics with, I think there was governance and communication somewhere. There's not a lot of people that are qualified like that, as nevertheless local politicians, because the economic situation in Doña Ana County appears to be the perfect condition set for, I'm just going to say corruption, and that's where the industry can come in and say, oh, well, we're going to bring jobs. We're going to bring jobs. When Daisy loses her job standing up for what's right, her job after so many years of being executive director of this org, um, I have to, before my introduction, I have to point that out and uplift Daisy because that is just incredible. That is, a resume does not say that, okay? That is, anyway, so my name is John Copeland. I'm a community organizer, advocating for environmental justice, water, and air protection here in the borderlands. I live yodeling distance from Daisy. I'm co-founder of the Hold the Line campaign, a grassroots organization that teaches communities how to respond to pipelines and the connected infrastructure, teaching them about the federal public participation process that most people have never heard of. My path started standing in solidarity with the Standing Rock Sioux Native American tribe in 2016. I went and camped out at Osheti and the elders there taught us that Standing Rock is everywhere, that we need to go home as the seventh generation. We need to go home and organize our own communities. And so 10 years later, that's exactly what I'm doing. And tonight I'll show you how that road has led our organization to organizing in response to two pipelines connected to Project Jupiter and the successful work that we're doing with the community. So yeah, that's my introduction. I suppose pass it back to Pablo or whoever is emceeing.
No, I think if you want to show something now, John, now's the time.
Well, Daisy, did you want to talk a bit more about Project Jupiter and the impacts?
Um, no, I mean, you can also share, but I can, yeah, that's one thing, right? We didn't necessarily coordinate on. I can go briefly. I don't know how much time we have, Pablo, from now. I apologize.
We have 2-3 minutes left.
Okay. So yeah, I'll just then briefly mention, um, just in terms of the project itself and as a whole, and then I can pass it to John. So briefly, just Project Jupiter is a four building data center project with energy generation. And so what the right now, right, our biggest fight and our biggest complaint or like what we're trying to battle really is the energy generation part. Initially, the companies have stated that they want to use gas turbines to produce that energy, which would produce 14 tons of CO2 in our area, which is more than Las Cruces, Albuquerque, and like Santa Fe combined. And so because of all the pushback and good work that we've done, they changed their gas turbine energy generation plant to what they're calling a fuel cell technology plant, which is just another very problematic, right, energy generation form of energy generation. It would still produce a ton of CO2 emissions, a ton, like 10 tons, in fact. It would still use our water, right? And so in our community, like we are suffering from a severe drought. And again, we can't give away of our water. And then we're just turning ourselves, they want to turn us into a sacrifice zone, especially around those emissions, because already that community is in a non-attainment zone, which means that the air that they breathe is already not meeting federal standards. And yet now they want to put a power plant that will just increase that exponentially. And where John comes in, he can talk about the pipeline. There's actually two pipelines that is related to this project that he can address.
Thank you, Daisy. So now everyone has an idea about the dangers that this data center has for our community. Again, my expertise are the pipelines that are planned to feed this data center, which will be supplying methane gas, as Daisy said, in an EPA non-attainment zone. So as I said earlier, 10 years ago, back in 2016, I stood in solidarity with the Standing Rock Sioux tribe against the Dakota Access Pipeline. And the lesson I carried home was that a pipeline fight was never just about the pipe. It's about who gets a voice in those decisions. As Daisy mentioned earlier, it's about community consent. And so, oh, I don't know if you guys can hear that. So this was when I returned home from Standing Rock, we had co-organized, not Daisy and I, but myself and other folks co-organized a protest of solidarity back in Houston outside of Energy Transfer Partners headquarters. And that's where I met Fabiola, who you see holding that water is life sign there. She is now our executive director of Hold the Line campaign. And so since then, Fabiola and I founded the Hold the Line campaign to defend my hometown from a 680-mile pipeline that threatened my family and my community. The De La Express pipeline was the last fight we took on before Project Jupiter. And for a year and a half, the pipeline company told regulators that they are reconsidering the route in light of the sheer volume of comments that they received on the FERC docket, which we attribute from the people that we had taught how to use the federal public participation process. And so I'm delighted to share some good news of our recent success after this year and a half. July 1st of this month, this year, the company informed the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, also known as FERC, that it is suspending its pre-filing application, which demonstrates that our strategy of educating frontline folks on how to participate in this process works. And it doesn't just have to be frontline folks. You all have a stake in this, considering you all pay federal taxes to this Federal Energy Regulatory Commission to regulate, okay? And so now we are carrying the same energy into the fight to defend the borderlands from the pipelines that are feeding Project Jupiter. Just a little brief overview of what our work entails. We document pipeline-related incidents as well as construction. This here was a pipeline leak that occurred outside my mother's neighborhood, where pipeline workers were more concerned about calling the police on me for documenting the leak rather than closing down the street as a school bus had just driven by the plume of the gas leak. That could have easily turned into a pipeline explosion. And so if you'd like to see that video, you can check out our Instagram, our Facebook page. I believe there's a Linktree link that someone could drop into the chat for me. We also take impacted community members to meet their legislators and regulators to confront them directly for continuing to allow this industry to take advantage of our communities. And so now that it's been 10 years after they sprayed us water protectors with water cannons at Standing Rock, we're currently up against the same company that violated Native American treaty lands. They are now operating through their subsidiary, Transwestern Pipeline Company, to construct two lateral pipelines connected to Project Jupiter. But here's a bombshell for all of you to consider during this time of our lives. Energy Transfer Partners, or they're now called Energy Transfer, they have had political connections to Donald Trump, as President Trump has held financial holdings in the form of Energy Transfer stock. The CEO of Energy Transfer has also donated to Donald Trump's political campaign. So I hope you can understand the scale of what our frontline community here in the borderlands stands in front of right now. It's quite daunting at times, but we are standing firm and we are fearless. So a little more information about the individual pipelines to the data center. First, we have the Green Chile lateral pipeline. It branches off of a main line, but this lateral is approximately 18 miles, moving 400,000 units of gas per day. It was filed with FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, this January under a blanket certificate that was originally issued in 1982. For most of you, that was not that long ago. For me, that was before I was born. The blanket certificate was issued for maintenance and upgrades to existing mainline. It's an aging pipeline that's over 65 years old. It doesn't take an attorney to see that this extension is not a routine upgrade or maintenance. And so here at the bottom, you can see the map of the main line, the aging main line that stretches all the way from Texas to California. And so they're trying to use the blanket certificate for this main line in order to skirt environmental impact statements, which is a parallel strategy we see being used as in Standing Rock. The Dakota Access Pipeline was also constructed without these environmental impact statements. And so, running parallel to the Green Chile pipeline, we have the Red Chile pipeline that's part of the new Desert Southwest expansion, which is now in FERC pre-filing. They can't use the blanket certificate on this one, but they have scoping session meetings scheduled in less than 7 days, scoping session meetings that don't exist for the other pipeline, the Green Chile pipeline. But we're going to take this opportunity, as we've done in the past with the De La pipeline, to go meet impacted community members and landowners who need help learning about the public participation, which I'll get more into here in a moment. By the company's own resource reports, this new pipeline, the main line here at the bottom from Texas all the way to Arizona, it's 48 inches in diameter and roughly 526 miles. And so as it's transporting gas to Arizona, this pipeline will cross our region and supply energy to Project Jupiter. So here's what's working. In April, we assisted residents of the front line who are ordinary people, not attorneys. We helped them file their own comments on the Green Chile pipeline docket. Okay, they made their comments and we went and helped navigate the difficult docket, the website and all that belongs to the federal government. And we did this before the comment deadline because we know that local people know the land better than the faraway decision makers that are in Santa Fe, Austin, Texas, our state capitals, or our national capital, Washington, D.C. We know the land better, And so folks raised their concerns in their own comments, and we filed a motion to intervene, citing those same concerns that they had made, which led to the first known protest of a project initiated by FERC. So I have still yet to this day heard anyone else say that FERC has protested, the federal government has protested a pipeline project. But we successfully forced the federal government's hand at protesting this project, as federal officers cited in their protest the same legal language that we filed in our intervention as basis for their protest, noting that the pipeline application does not appear to satisfy legal requirements to move forward. Since then, FERC staff has issued an environmental information request, which requires the pipeline company to include Project Jupiter and all of its associated downstream facilities in the cumulative impacts analysis. the federal government named it. They named Project Jupiter, which is quite unusual because normally they don't consider downstream facilities. But this is what our community had been demanding in their comments from the beginning. So these data requests and disclosures have continued to come in through June and July, and with our help, again, ordinary residents put questions on the record, and the federal government is now asking those questions to the pipeline company. And that is the power of public participation processes. So this is my second to last slide. One of the key concerning issues raised in our intervention was water. We informed the federal regulators that this project draws from aquifers that are shared with Mexico that are already being stressed and they're understudied. These aquifers are protected under the La Paz Agreement, which is an agreement with Mexico and the US, and we asked for a transboundary assessment, them having scoping sessions on both sides of the international border, which has never been done before, but in this case, it warrants this. And as well as a pause in permitting until the New Mexico State University completes an independent review of our understudied desert aquifers. We have a water crisis here already in the desert. And so, meanwhile, as of late last year, the Trump administration continued to put pressure on Mexico, citing outdated water treaties that were signed before American agriculture was outsourced to Mexico. So basically, before our food production went to Mexico, which means Mexico needs more water. This water treaty has not been renegotiated. I believe this treaty happened around or near World War II. I can't remember the exact date right now. But here's the latest. On May 26th, the Supreme Court ordered New Mexico to cut groundwater use, which is nearly 6 billion gallons a year over a decade, specifically in the basin that Project Jupiter sits in. Meanwhile, the project's own construction water comes from a relocated water source that's currently under formal protest, and the utility promising its long-term supply is tied up in a governance dispute over who even runs it. And so, as State Senator Joseph Cervantes put it, this is not New Mexico versus Texas anymore. It's New Mexico versus New Mexico. Meanwhile, we have the United States versus Mexico. So, what you can do about this, every one of you can also be part of the FERC record. Anyone can file a public comment. No attorney is required. And so I'm dropping a link in the chat to a sign-on letter where you have the option to sign on to our letter, which will be filed on the record. There's also an additional option there if you'd like to make your own individual comments. We will file that on the FERC record along with all the other comments that we collect from impacted frontline community. Nothing we've accomplished required a law degree. It required knowing that the public process exists, the public participation process exists. So I encourage you to participate in this with us. Thank you. And thank you again, Pablo.
You're very welcome. And we were expecting some students over at UTEP to join us this evening to talk about their work, organizing folks. But I'm happy to say that we have also, I want to recognize Allison from the UU Church of Las Cruces. And I don't know if I think there are a couple of UU Church of Las Cruces people who have been involved in the fight one way or another. So I'm going to invite Allison to come on through and just quickly say what it's been like to organize in and around this issue, and then we'll move on to hearing from Alexa from Food and Water Watch. Allison, you have the stage.
Hey, thank you so much, Pablo. Hi, my name is Allison Claire Neal Wallace. My pronouns are she and her. I will, for the sake of time, forgo a visual description for now. I wanted to talk a little bit more on I'm from the UU Church of Las Cruces. I do some outreach digital stuff there, and I am a lifelong UU. And I do this work because I believe in protecting the interconnected web of existence. And a lot of this work is faith-based for me. I wanted to kind of talk a little bit more about those 3 weeks that Daisy mentioned when they announced that there was going to be a vote on approving the $165 billion with about 3 weeks of public notice. What happened in those 3 weeks was something that I found to be truly amazing, and it was a wonderful display of organizing prowess and practice. We saw dozens and dozens of the best organizers in Doña Ana County pull together one of the best public comment turnout efforts that I have ever seen in my life. It was truly beautiful. At the very beginning, this kind of all kicked off in terms of us organizing together under the Stop Project Jupiter campaign when my now late best friend, Jonathan Delgado, and a number of us who do organizing in this community were at a Progressive Voter Alliance meeting in Las Cruces, hearing all these people complain about it. And my good buddy John, in that time, sat in the back of the room and was the last speaker because he had sat in the back of the room making a website, stopprojectjupiter.org, which is now a little bit out of date. But this was last year, right at the beginning of the announcement of the project. People were angry. We saw that and we capitalized on it. We had dozens of organizers then spending the next several days folding trifolds. I threw together some data points on a trifold little graphic, and we handed those out, and we folded hundreds of those by hand, had printed them at a friend's house, and we flyer bombed every single community meeting that the Project Jupiter folks were holding. We wanted the community to be involved. We wanted the community to be informed, and we continued to fight back for that community and at that community's behest. And a lot of what I was involved in was doing that graphic design, doing outreach to local elected officials, where I learned a lot of information about how deep the rot truly went, how there was the vice president of Borderplex Digital Assets, who was the company that the developer hired to get this passed, giving a tour to state legislators of the Santa Teresa industrial complex before the county commission vote was even announced. And that is the site of Project Jupiter. For those who are not aware, it is in that industrial complex. Just some numbers on impact directly for Project Jupiter from their current proposals, thanks to the wonderful folks in this campaign who I just texted about 2 minutes ago to ask for this data, and they got it to me very fast. They are expected to be emitting, with even their new, more environmentally friendly, quote unquote, plan, to emit 10 million tons of CO2 a year, putting us back to 2005 levels and effectively erasing the last 20 years of moving to renewables through New Mexico's Energy Transition Act, something our state legislator worked very hard on. They consistently lied about their water use, changed their power generation plans at least twice, and less than 20% of the jobs are going to people from New Mexico. And we have multiple officials or multiple representatives from Oracle and Bloom, who is the energy provider, saying that they are not hiring these jobs in New Mexico. They are hiring remote jobs in San Jose, California, and away from New Mexico. They are exploiting our air, our natural resources, our water, just to get through their $165 billion project. The county commission is being sued by not only the organizations that Daisy had mentioned, but also they're being sued under the Open Elections Act that New Mexico has for holding illegal closed public meetings, illegally signing NDAs. In a last-ditch effort to save face, the County Commission of Doña Ana County fired County Manager Scott Andrews, who has kind of positioned himself as sort of a face of this project. Project Jupiter folks hired lobbyists. They built a brand new PAC where they spent millions, over $1.5 million, on buying advertisements in the Doña Ana County area, saying that Project Jupiter was for clean air and water and was going to be good for New Mexico. They sent a lobbyist and her they sent a lobbyist for Project Jupiter and her brother appeared at a vocally opposed state legislator's house in an attempt to intimidate her. They have sent miners in extreme heat to harass community members with misinformation, and they are paying well enough that people are feeling that this is a good opportunity. They have so much money they can just they are trying to just erase our organizing efforts by just spending so much money. So thank you so much for this opportunity. And thank you so much to Pablo, to USJ for inviting me, and to all the wonderful people who are here today. Shout out to all of my folks from UU Las Cruces. And that's just, a little bit of what was going on in those 3 weeks, and we are still fighting today. So thank you so much, Pablo.
Thank you so much, Allison. Now, because the local fights are never operating in isolation. I mean, you just heard that from Allison, you heard it from John, you heard some of the dynamics from Daisy. I'm going to bring to the fore Alexa Reynaud of Food and Water Watch. So we want to hear from Alexa not only about the circumstance in New Mexico, but also to try and help us connect it to what's going on nationally. So thank you so much, Alexa.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me this evening. My name is Alexa Reynaud. I use she, her, aya pronouns, and I am the Rural Organizing Manager with Food and Water Watch, but I'm actually based out of Taos, New Mexico. So I'm on the northern part of the state, but I'm still here. I was born and raised in New Mexico. This is my home. I grew up understanding the importance of water. And so Food and Water Watch, we are a national nonprofit who fights for the safe and healthy food, clean water, and livable climate that we all deserve. We empower people to take on destructive corporations and the policymakers who enable them in order to stop pollution, defend democracy, and protect the planet now and for future generations. And so even though I am my work, even though I am from New Mexico and my work primarily focuses on the goings on here in the state of New Mexico, I am also keyed into our national and federal work on data centers. So I'm going to actually widen the scope just a little bit and kind of talk a little bit about the federal dynamics happening around data centers. So first, I kind of want to talk about what we call the big tech playbook and what we're seeing at the national level and then also, of course, at the state level. So across the board, what we are seeing is locations being targeted for data center development are communities that are one or a many factors. So they are either low income, communities of color, primarily non-English speaking, rural, communities that are already facing the burden of compounding climate issues, or a combination of these factors. And as we've heard this evening, Santa Teresa and Sunland Park, this area is no different from these malicious attacks, and it actually only enforces Big Tech's playbook of targeting communities that they don't believe will fight back. They're incredibly wrong. Sad to say, but it is what they believe. So additionally, across the board, data centers pose massive dangers to our water resources. You heard a little bit about New Mexico's water resources today, how they're super scarce. And any drop going to an AI data center and big tech is a drop that could be going to the people who are actually living in our communities. And while water resources are top of mind here in New Mexico, they're also a huge concern with data center development nationally. I'm sure you've heard in states like Utah, Nevada, and Arizona, the Colorado River and its basins are in extreme danger. And on the East Coast, New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania, all of these states are fighting for against data centers. And one of the main concerns is water usage and water contamination from data centers and their development. Water is a national concern around these extractive facilities. And then finally, what we're really seeing a lot of is corporate and billionaire bad actors, and have seen that data center benefits only flow to the wealthy and the powerful. The rapid AI rollout may be ushering in a speculative stock market bubble. I always miss that, but it's a stock market bubble similar to the 2000s dot-com bust and the 2008 global financial crisis. AI companies secured hundreds of billions of dollars in debt in 2025 alone, while requiring an additional $6.7 trillion in capital investments to meet projected demand. Additionally, the Trump administration is funding AI with public dollars. In 2025, the administration pledged $8.9 billion in government investments into Intel's common stock to expand domestic semiconductor manufacturing. The largest tech companies are experiencing record earnings, which is translating into even more riches for the tech oligarchy. Now, there have been a number of deplorable administrative actions that we've seen over the last couple of years, as well as some federal dynamics as to why these actions are happening. So the first I'm going to mention is an executive order that was put out by the White House called Accelerating Federal Permitting of Data Center Infrastructure. This order makes AI infrastructure a national priority and instructs agencies to take steps to accelerate permitting and public financing of projects. And it also includes creating new categories of exclusions and encourages the use of federal lands for AI infrastructure. Another thing I'm going to mention are a few EPA rollbacks. So the first is the Clean Air Act construction rule. This rollback would allow projects to begin construction without having the necessary Clean Act permits required for operation, which will only aid in speeding up development of energy infrastructure, especially for data centers. Another rollback is toxic chemical fast tracking, which does exactly what it sounds like and fast tracks toxic chemicals that are used in data centers for their construction and operation for approval. Both of these EPA rollbacks and the president's executive order are important because they give AI data centers a fast track towards development. Accelerated timelines make it really difficult for the directly impacted communities of data centers to fight back against their construction because they often do not have the time or the resources to do so as quickly as they need to. This goes against all aspects of free, prior, and informed consent. Now, the reason that we're seeing these actions being taken are many, but the key one that I want to focus on is big tech's big agenda. So the administration and allies of the tech industry and Congress are not just pushing a pro-data center agenda. They are aiming for a much broader agenda that would subvert and undermine policies that are there to protect public health and the environment. This is evidenced by the EPA rollbacks that I mentioned. Additionally, while big tech is going big, most members of Congress are focusing kind of dogmatically on the affordability of data centers through minor regulatory action. But even these affordability bills lack the comprehensive framework for the increase of energy needed to actually fuel these centers. And this focus is also devoid of consideration of other known impacts of data centers, including the water supplies, the air pollution, the noise, and more. One bill that is currently in Congress is the Price Act, which would require large-scale data centers to generate 100% of their own annual electricity, and it advocates for clean energy targets reaching 100% clean energy generation by 2040. But we say, why limit this to one specific industrial sector? We advocate for a more comprehensive approach through regulating all sectors of industry in this way, and the language as drafted would actually allow for corporations like Amazon, who have tech data centers, to claim increased levels of green energy generation simply through their data centers, while not actually changing their other problematic practices. Another bill is the Data Center Transparency Act, and this calls for the requirement of reports on the effects of data centers on air and water quality and on electricity consumption. While in theory this sounds like a good idea, the bill language actually specifies that the reports on the effects be submitted after the data center be constructed, not before. We need to know upfront before construction happens that so that we know the actual cumulative impacts before they go putting one of these into a community. So where does that leave us? It is clear that our leaders are not giving up without a fight. It's good that they're doing stuff, but there's one that has just a little bit more teeth. There are a few federal bills, again, like I mentioned, but the real one is going to be Senator Bernie Sanders' moratorium and Representatives AOC's artificial intelligence data center moratorium bills. Those are kind of, you can see the bill numbers here on the screen, respectively. So both of these bills would impose a moratorium on the construction of all new data centers until strong national safeguards are in place to protect workers, consumers, communities, defend privacy and civil rights, and ensure these technologies do not harm our environment. And there is growing support for these bills on the Hill. In recent weeks, we've seen many federal legislators express their support of data center moratoriums, including Representative Pallone of New Jersey, who is the ranking member of the Energy and Commerce Committee, who called for a moratorium on data centers. We also have seen a lot of new sponsorship on the legislation, including Representatives Waters, Grijalva, and more. Food and Water Watch also supports this legislation. We really do commend Senator Sanders and Representative Ocasio-Cortez for their bold, insightful leadership on this critical issue at the federal level. And given the pace of the unregulated AI data center build-out, other members of Congress must move quickly to sponsor, champion, and pass this legislation with them. There's also another bill that I would like to just quickly mention, and this is Representative Tlaib's bill, which would place a moratorium on data center infrastructure from being built on federal lands. Remember earlier I said they're trying to build on federal lands? This would address that. This bill is expected to be introduced soon, and we will also be supporting this legislation as another bold effort to curb big tech. So now, I think I got my slides a little bit mixed up. So I just want to emphasize here that state work is still key. While the work at the federal level, sometimes it moves a lot slower. There's a lot more, gears and a lot more going on. That is why the state level work is really important. State, local work feeds into the federal work, it trickles up. So any win that we have at the state level, including the Santa Fe data center moratoriums, the Socorro moratoriums, the new Sierra County moratoriums, all of these trickle up to the state level, and then any wins we have at the state level trickle up to the federal level. So it's really, really important that we continue to the work at every level. The federal work is just one aspect of it. And so now I'm going to bring it back to New Mexico a little bit and share just a couple of resources that we hope will be useful in any kind of state level fight, or if you're interested just generally in learning more, we hope these will be useful to you. So Food and Water Watch recently released a new report specifically that focuses on the impacts of data centers, and then also one that talks about the impacts specifically to New Mexico. In addition, with the aid of Light Hawk, we were able to fly over Project Jupiter, the construction site, to get aerial images. If you're interested in checking out either of those resources, you can do so at the link we'll put in the chat here in a minute. There's also a Spanish translation for that research in those documents. So if you're interested and you would like to read that in Spanish, that's available as well. And finally, in those in the second link, there's going to be at the bottom a message action. So if you're interested in urging your own member of Congress to support the Bernie AOC bills, you can fill out that message action on that web piece. And then finally, the last thing I want to share is a brand new web piece, literally came out at noon today. And this is about Big Tech's playbook and how it's unfolding specifically in the context of Project Jupiter. And it kind of breaks down each pillar and highlights how Project Jupiter and Big Tech is following each of these pillars. So you can also read that web piece at the link we'll put in the chat here in a minute. And so again, while this federal work might move slow, it's at least moving and at a quicker pace than we originally anticipated. So we'll continue to fight at the federal level while also engaging and supporting at the state and local levels. And we really do thank everyone here, all of my co-panelists here, for all the work that they're doing to stop these destructive facilities across New Mexico. And with that, I will stop sharing and pass it back.
Thank you so much, Alexa. Thank you so much, Daisy, John, Allison. I know that some of us have to run, but I'm going to basically ask if you have a question, now's the time to either drop it in the chat or better still, raise your electronic hand. And we're going to try and put all the different speakers up on the same panel now so we can perhaps answer some questions.
I just wanted to say one thing, Pablo. Thank you so much to Karen, Cindy, Christine, and Lori for your comments. Again, if you guys want to sign on to our sign-on letter or make a comment, I'm dropping the link again in the chat. But thank you so much for sending those in.
Thank you. Paulette, can you help me spotlight the various folks? I don't seem to have that control. maybe we'll just do it as a as a as a oh, there we go. Okay. Thank you, Paulette. And please add Alexa and add Allison. You don't need to add me necessarily, but I just want to give everybody the opportunity to see our guests and to ask a question. But I'm going to start the ball rolling, and I'll simply ask, based on your various experiences, what is the key thing that you want others to know about your fight, and perhaps something that bridges to their potential fight? Like, what is the one or two key takeaways that you want everybody here on this call to understand about what you've been going through?
I'd be happy to answer. The key thing we want others to know that bridges potential to other fight is that there are public participation processes. You may not know about them. That's where, we're happy to help educate folks. If we win here in the borderlands, since this pipeline crosses state boundaries, it becomes a federally regulated project. And so we're essentially, our wins are setting the precedent nationally. So if we win using like an archaeological angle or water issue angle, that is something that you can go and your communities, if you're dealing with the pipeline to a data center that crosses state lines, and say, well, hey, look, you guys denied this pipeline project because of X, Y, and Z, or you held it back because it didn't have this information. You can take our wins and use them in your battles is what I'm trying to say.
Thanks so much for that, John. Daisy, do you have any top line thoughts after listening to all the different presentations and comments that you've remembered? I know you've
Yeah.
been
I think for me, the biggest thing is just thinking about other communities that like if we don't stand up and fight for ourselves, right, then who's going to do it? And I feel like this specific fight has really taught me that lesson. And I think this can, this is a through line to anybody else around the country who's fighting a good fight. And, as much as industry wants to, quelch all of our efforts, and, in fact, like this, I feel like your community belongs to you, right? It does not belong to the billionaires. It does not belong to industry. And you have a right, to like self-determination. You have a right to decide what comes into your community, and no one deserves to be a sacrifice zone so that billionaires can just get richer and so that AI can be actualized and the AI gods, turn into God. Yeah, I feel like this is definitely a moment that us as Americans, and I mean just us as community members, need to stand up and say, not my community, not here. And it's a bigger fight, and yeah, and you have a right to stand and say no. So thank you.
Allison.
Yeah, I just want to build on that. My two key takeaways for everyone that's here with us, and thank you all for being here with us, is it doesn't happen without people. If you are one of my friends in Las Cruces that are here, please stand up, get involved. If you're in Las Cruces, you know where to find me on a Sunday morning, so you can come talk to me. You can also talk to any of the other wonderful people we've heard from, because this doesn't happen without people. If we want to get these wins that can affect everyone nationally, we have to do it ourselves. We have to be there. And my other key takeaway is for everyone at home is we are all interconnected. Coming back to that is that our environment is an extension of us. It is part of us. Like Daisy said, our communities are ours. Our environment is ours too. This is our earth. This is our home. I don't want to see data centers, the biggest data center project in the country happen in my backyard, at the expense of people in my community, because that's wrong, because we don't belong, because it doesn't belong to anyone. None of this belongs to anyone. It belongs to us all, because we are all interconnected and we are all one. So remember that as you go forward, and yeah.
Thank you. That's great. So I'm just doing a quick scan of the chat. I don't see anybody with specific questions, but I wonder, does anybody want to raise their electronic hand? Be brave, come on, and or at least voice a question. While people are finding their oh, there we go. Rebecca P.
Oh,
Please come off mute and ask your question.
Rebecca Peterson. I'm in Santa Fe. I grew up here. Thank you so much for all your presentations. And those of you down in Las Cruces, I really appreciate the connection with the land and just the beauty of your statements about the earth, because I feel like the earth feels this. And, you know, I grew up here, and my grandfather was like this kind of nomad in his older years, and he would go camp down in Santa Teresa during the winters, and we'd go visit him and camp there. And, you know, he had his funky old like truck with his and his dog, and he'd fish and everything. So I feel connected to that part of the land, and also lived in Mexico many years. So feel very connected to the borderland as well. So we really appreciate that energy that you're all bringing. So I have a specific question. Part of it is I wrote the governor. I got so upset this week. I thought I'm going to write the governor and see. And I got this horrible email back. I was like, "Don't you want to end your term by opposing the Jupiter Center?" And I didn't realize how in favor of it she was. And the reply was like appalling. I couldn't believe it. It was like, the New Mexico is setting the environmental standard for the development of data centers. It was just like, so I wanted to know like what to say to that, you know. So now I have all this information and data that's really going to be helpful. I'll sign the petitions. So one of my real questions is about, as this legislation session starts up this winter in Santa Fe, it is the idea of the bill to stop this on the state level. Is this functional? You know, is it actually workable? I know you guys have a really great state, I guess it's a state senator down there who's done a lot of work for the environment. I can't remember his name right now, Dan or something. So what can we do from here in terms of the state? Is it even going to happen in time, the session? Like, I almost wonder, can they have an emergency session or something? But that's kind of my question, is around state legislation and how can we help? I've been part of Indivisible up here. I go to their meetings, and they have a lot of advocacy of going to the committee meetings and all that stuff. So you've got a lot of allies up here in that arena.
Well, I can take on this question. Back in the session at the beginning of 2026, our short 30-day session, I did work. I think you're probably talking about Senator Jeff Steinborn.
Yes.
I did work with Senator Steinborn on drafting the microgrid oversight bill that proposed and passed through the Senate floor, but then ran out of time in the session. We kind of got on it late. But what is being proposed by Senator Steinborn, Senator Cervantes, and Senator Hamblin, and I believe is there more, but what's being proposed is another moratorium, and it would be a pause on building new centers. It is very, very unlikely that they are going to be able to pass legislation that directly stops Project Jupiter in that moratorium. What they can do is they can force them to become compliant with, become environmentally compliant. And this is just legislatively, in the world where there's not all this public pressure. Legislatively, really, the main path they have is attacking the way they are generating power and the way that they are emitting. And so they are currently not projected to be in line with the ETA, the Energy Transition Act, because they are exempt from it because of a loophole put into a bill in the 2025 legislative session, excluding microgrids from the ETA. And it was something added on the Senate floor at the last moment. So what they're working on right now is a pause. And the idea is that the pause would allow us to kind of put through more legislation and get them in check and figure out, okay, what can we do to stop big emitters, big water drains, and hopefully they will address the way that these are being handled by the county governments as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Oh, go for it, Daisy.
Yeah, I just briefly want to talk about the air quality permit application comment period right now and the whole fight. Because this is, even though this isn't around legislation, this is a way to really stop the project from happening and moving forward. And, you know, probably there'll be some legislation coming that will allow it to move forward. But in any case, the companies, since they've changed their energy generation from gas turbines to fuel cell technology, that changed the timeline. And so right now, as we speak, over 17,000 public comments have been submitted on that air quality permit application. The cabinet secretary of the New Mexico Environment Department went ahead and said, we need a public hearing as a result of all this interest, of course. Last week they had a scheduling meeting, and the hearing officer, luckily, I'm going to say, but it's still to be determined, but understood that because the companies were asking for a public hearing to take place on August 17th, and he went back and reviewed it and said, no, obviously that's not enough time for people to get their information together, for advocates to make a case. And so a hearing was scheduled for October 19th. However, developers are not stopping. They have requested an emergency status hearing to try and change that October 19th hearing. So that's going to take place on Monday. July 27th. So this battle is continuing, and the companies are being relentless. And so we have to stay on our toes. And so what I will say is submit public comment for obviously for these air quality permit applications, share it with your friends, share it widely, plan for a public hearing to take place. It will be hybrid, so you can be able to give testimony online. And if you're so interested or you really, really want to be part of it, you can also request to be an intervener on this case as well. There's plenty of pro-safe people that have already signed up to be interveners, and that'll give you an opportunity again to speak during the public hearing and to make a case. So, and if you don't want to, that's also fine. We have really good advocates from the Center for Biological Diversity, from the New Mexico Environmental Law Center, and from the New Energy Economy, who are all really fighting this fight with us as well. So they're really sort of on the front line on the legal side, trying to stop this permit application from getting approved.
I just want to add real quick, Rebecca, thank you for sharing about your late father camping in the area and Santa Teresa and taking you there and whatever. That is exactly what never shows up in a permit application. And that's at stake. This is something sentimental that deserves to be on the public record too, showing the importance of the land to you. So, and wherever you comment, whether it be air quality permit comments, FERC comments, or even letters to your legislatures, be sure to include that fact, and please do become an intervener to take up space, because it does slow the projects down so we can have more time to do our studies of the land and how long people have been camping out in that area, whether it be the last 100 years or 1,000 years.
Awesome. I'm going to ask one question that occurred to me as you guys are speaking. In other presentations, in other forums, when we're talking about data centers, one of the key questions becomes, has the community fighting back begun to think about what organizing on the grid looks like? Because so many of these data centers, they're actually pulling energy from across their entire grid. Their activities have implications for the entire grid. Now, I know, John's over in Texas. I can never keep track if you guys have your own grid. You're part of a big grid. You have 5 different separate grids. It's a weird thing in Texas. But tell me about as you've been working in this fight, how has your organizing strategy moved beyond your specific area and into the tactical ways that data centers are connected to wider areas? Or if that's just something that's beginning to emerge now, that's fine. But
And I'm sorry, Pablo, can you ask that again? Like our fight and how are we widening that?
yeah, I mean, what I mean is in other places, I'm thinking of Ohio, I'm thinking of Pennsylvania, when one location pushes back on a data center, the proponents of the data center will often seek a new site, but it's on the same grid. And so the people who were in the first site are still impacted by the selection in the second instance, and that reality is beginning to instigate in other circumstances. I think Minnesota is one of those examples. People are starting to organize around the grid itself. The grid where your project happens to live is a wider patch than your county, your city, your state even. And so the question becomes, in the case of Project Jupiter, which does sit right on the border between Texas and New Mexico, and as John pointed out, it actually is on a third border, the Mexico border. Are you guys thinking about advocacy across the grid, soliciting allies or in other parts of your grid, because they will suffer some of the consequences if Project Jupiter is located in your location on their grid?
Yeah, I think, yeah, Daisy and I have had conversations about this because really they can draw power anywhere on the grid. If they don't get the gas from the pipelines, it will definitely put a strain. And that also means watching El Paso Electric Company's own planning, which thanks for bringing up the fact that Texas has its own grid. El Paso is an exception. El Paso's not on the ERCOT unstable grid that you remember that winter storm collapse. El Paso's actually on the national grid because it sends electricity to Doña Ana County. In our organizing, we have discovered that there may be a possibility that, correct me if I'm wrong, Daisy, I think El Paso Electric is not paying their fair share of taxes for using the easement. I can't remember that's a study from a long time ago, but we have looked into these sorts of things, and that is a really good point to consider organizing because I believe that El Paso Electric has already started increasing the rates in Doña Ana County. I'm not sure if that includes El Paso as well, but we're already seeing rate increases here nonetheless. So
Mhm.
that's all I have to say.
Yeah. So two things is we've actually have started working across state and what national borders. There's a group that meets and folks in Juarez join us. And so that conversation has been, and not necessarily around the grid, but just like how this project's going to impact across state lines and across the national border. And then specifically though, thinking about the grid, and John, they haven't necessarily increased New Mexico rates yet. There's actually a rate case right now that El Paso Electric is saying we need more money to like build out this infrastructure since you, New Mexico, want us to be green or and it would increase our rates by 70%. But essentially it's to build out, right? To make sure that the data centers have the power. But also, I think, again, going back to regionally, and that's not necessarily around the grid, but just that there's other data centers that are being proposed to be constructed in our vicinity, especially again on the Texas El Paso side. That's actually really close proximity to New Mexico residents, and then on their military base. So, and that like, no, there's no approval process there, right? It's just gonna happen. And so, yeah, it's like we almost feel like we're, a little bit of whack-a-mole, but like we're getting sort of bombarded in different places. So something that Alexa had said that like it's a good thing that counties are, pursuing moratoriums, because it for sure companies are looking, well, if we can't do it here, then where can we go in the area, right? We can go here, we can, try different options. And right now, although Socorro County passed a moratorium and there was a proposal for what they were calling a green data center that would use all solar. It left that county, the developers did, and they actually went into a different county, but both times they're actually seeking to construct on state land. So now we have to organize on, with our state land office to say like, we can't, allow this to happen. So, and that actually position is up for election this year. It'll be a new person come 2027. And that's TBD, right? We don't know who the position thus far was. I think someone on the call probably knows this, but the candidates, have stated that they will approve that type of request to build a data center on state land. So anyway, our organizing has had to be multifaceted for sure.
Well, I want to honor and respect the time that you guys volunteered for UUSJ, and so I want to bring our session to a close. We're going to do the thing that we do here at UUSJ, which is we're going to call it a soft close. If you want to roll off, you're free to roll off. Daisy, John, Allison,